I'm here with Marietseng and Grégory Henno. Delighted to see you again. We got together about a month ago to do an event for Hacking HR in Switzerland, which was wonderfully received by everyone. And we said at the time that it would be nice to have another chat and maybe learn a little bit more about Exchange Theatre.
The biggest challenge that we all face as HR practitioner, as trainers, as coaches, is how do we walk the talk? How do we encourage people to put into action what they have understood cognitively? So that has been always my challenge until I met Grégory and it explained to me how Exchange Theatre works, which was to offer a platform, as he said, for people to engage in conversation that are a little bit difficult and to do the first step into behavior change.
Okay. So can you explain a little bit how then you would start working with an organization to use this technique? How would the first conversations go? What would you be talking about?
Often the first thing when we start with a client, it's to identify what is the real challenge that they are trying to solve. What is the problem that they're going to work on? And what are we really trying to achieve for the organization, both in terms of behaviors, but in terms of performance as well.
Okay, and when you've got this topic, how do you two come together to design something, to imagine the way in which you're actually going to use Exchange Theatre?
I don't think we are going to imagine anything. We have to first start to discuss with the clients, really, and to tell him, okay, we don't know you, we don't know your organization, so help us to understand deeper what's your issue and what your people think about this issue.
Another tool in our toolbox is based on action learning. So just having action learning group coaching session to identify the real problem sometimes is a tool that we use as well. But what, as Grégory said, what the clients see might not be what the real problem is in the organization being asked. So through this, we collect both what is the problem, we collect the lingual within the organization, we collect stories of things that have happened, and all this is the material we use to create a scenario that will be a concentrate of the challenges, issue, problem that the organization is facing regarding the topic that we identified with the client.
And then once you have that, how does it work most effectively?
Okay, well, you always have to go back to what is the objective that you're trying to achieve. And when you talk about change behavior, there's three levels. First is the impact and the awareness. For people to change, they need to realize that they need to change. So that's where Exchange Theatre creates that moment that even puts a mirror in front of people's face where they say, yes, that's me sometimes. The second thing, once you've done that, is how do you open up and acknowledge it and be a little bit vulnerable to share that with your colleagues, to connect it to your workspace. So once we have Exchange Theatre, we follow that by immediate facilitation so that people can use that energy that came out of the theater to connect, exchange with their colleagues to see, acknowledge it and what could we do to make it better. And the third level is to actually solve the problem. We've created that awareness that, yes, we have something here that we need to improve on. Then we can use other methods to sustain that learning and lead towards real solution that will improve performance in the organization.
And you've already mentioned, obviously, that it's not just the performance, if you like. It's not just the event of the Exchange Theatre, that there's follow-up.
We recently did a session on diversity for a Malaysian organization, and through the conversation, somebody said, well, yes, I recognize myself here putting doubt when I have to hire a woman who potentially might be pregnant in the next few months. And yes, I see now that it's not acceptable, but I also have my KPIs and my performance. So how do we, as an organization, and she turned to the HR team, how do we address that? The client needs to be ready for that follow-up. So follow-up is, what are people asking as a follow-up? What are the skills that we need to really work on, develop, build in order, again, to achieve the objective we had, to solve the problem that we saw initially, and also sometime as an organization, from a process perspective, what else can we do? So in the journey, we use facilitation after Exchange Theatre. We use action learning coaching to encourage people in different teams to work together to solve very concretely that problem while working on the skills that they want to develop. It has to be a long-term process and project for the organization, because you don't change behavior with a 3.5-hour session.
Marie, Grégory, thank you so much for talking to me, and thank you so much for your intervention in the Hacking HR session. It was wonderful, and I think it's really something that deserves to be discovered by more people. So, thank you.